Hey, it's Plumber Tom. Don't forget to check in the comments below for a link where you can find additional resources like practice tests and courses that you can take. Your support helps me to be able to create more great content. Thanks for watching. Hello, welcome to this video where we will be taking a look at slip joint drainage fittings. If you're ever going to be involved with connecting fixtures, that's sinks, tubs, things like that, you will likely run into slip joint drainage fittings. Slip joint is also known as tubular, and again, it's specifically for hooking up drains. Now, it comes together by tightening a nut and a washer to a threaded connection on a drainage fitting. And this is so that we can assemble them in a cabinet or in another space below a sink. But because they come together with nuts and washers, it is required by code that these are accessible. So if these are used to connect a tub, for example, they have to have an access to that tub drain. Now let's talk about slip joint sizes. There are typically two sizes you're going to see with this. The most common is 1.5 inch, but there is also 1.25 inch available. And smaller sink drains, such as a lavatory sink, are typically going to have a 1.25 inch drain outlet. And so you can use that smaller slip joint size to connect those fixtures. Most 1.5 slip joint P-traps are going to come with a reducing washer that can be used to connect to the 1.25 inch. So you'd have 1.25 inch tailpiece coming from the sink, and then a washer that's going to adapt that from the 1.25 inch up to the 1.5 inch. It's going to be a little bit thicker. That's a washer that's going to enable an 1.5 inch P-trap to connect to an 1.25 inch drain outlet. While we may call the pipe a 1.5 inch pipe size for the slip joint or tubular, they're actually slightly smaller than your typical nominal pipe size. And that is so that they can slide into the other pipe. So if I have an 1.5 inch pipe I'm going to connect to coming out of the wall, and I use an 1.5 inch slip joint fitting, it's going to slide inside that pipe fairly easily. Most slip joint has a reducing washer. That means it's kind of like a wedge. It's beveled on one end. And it's important to note that those are always installed with the narrow end in the direction of flow. Now, people have problems all the time when they're connecting slip joint fittings with those leaking. The problem is, most of the time, they don't know how these go together, and they'll either put the washer in backwards, or they'll leave the washer out altogether, or they don't tighten it enough, or they have bad angles. So sometimes these are intimidating to people because they tend to leak, but the reality is that if you know how to do these and you put them together properly, they're really not that bad. Slip joint comes in at least 3 different material types. There are PVC, ABS, and polished chrome, which is basically brass that has a chrome finish on it. And you can use any of these to connect fixtures, but the polished chrome is going to cost a lot more because it's brass, and is most commonly used in commercial settings. Now, when you're installing slip joint, once again, you'll always want to make sure that the washer is installed and that it is installed in the correct direction with the narrow side facing downstream. Generally, these need to be tightened by hand, and then you can tighten them a little bit with a tool like channel lock or pipe wrench, but you don't want to crank really hard on this, especially the plastic ones, because they can crack and break. Slip joint can be cut to fit, and that's something that you will often have to do in an installation, is cut the pipe to whatever size or length will fit into the installation. Now that goes for all the different types, whether it's PVC, ABS, or polished chrome. The plastic pipes, you can use a small hacksaw. That gets really messy. Often I like to use either a wheel cutter or even my PEX cutting tool. Just the tubing cutters can sometimes do well on the PVC or ABS. When it comes to polished chrome, you're going to have to use a wheel cutter, just like you would cut copper. Slip joint connections are great for connecting any type of sink. It can connect to a pop-up drain, basket strainer drain. It can be used to connect multiple basins. So you can have like a disposal waste kit where you hook up one sink with this basket strainer and the disposal, or a continuous waste kit where you're going to have two sink basins connected together using the slip joint fittings, and those would come together to a single P-trap. Now this is a slip joint parts identification video, so let's go over what these actually look like. Here we have an 1.5" PVC slip joint P-trap. You can get it in a smaller size, 1.25" PVC slip joint P-trap. This is an 1.5" ABS slip joint P-trap. And for comparison, we also have the 1.5" chrome slip joint P-trap. This is an 1.5" PVC extension tailpiece. And you can get a double extension tailpiece. This is an 1.25" PVC extension tailpiece. Smaller size, same thing. This is an 1.5" ABS extension tailpiece. This is an 1.25" chrome extension tailpiece. This is an 1.5" chrome extension tailpiece. This is an 1.5" PVC flanged tailpiece. This is an 1.5" ABS flanged tailpiece. This is an 1.5" chrome flanged tailpiece. Now please note, with these extension and flanged tailpieces, they come in different lengths, or they can be cut to length, and you can also get them with double ends. And that's not the way you're going to install it, but it just gives you two pieces that you can connect in different settings, understanding that you're going to cut them to fit. Now it is important to note that whenever you're connecting a flanged end to the underside of a sink drain, it also has to have a special washer. It's a flanged washer. It doesn't have the same bevel look as the other washers used to connect slip joint fittings, but you're going to do a lot better and have less leaks if you make sure that the washer is inserted properly when connecting a flanged tailpiece or a flanged end to the underside of a basket strainer or sink drain. Now there are also slip joint fittings that can connect multiple fixture outlets together. So that's where we start to get into the T's. This is an 1.5" PVC slip joint T. This is an 1.5" ABS slip joint T. And this is an 1.5" chrome slip joint T. Now these are the most common types of slip joint T's that are used. They have a baffle inside that will help divert the water from the inlet on the side downstream. There are other types of T's. This is an example of a center waste T, and they come together in the center of two elbows. This is an 1.5" ABS slip joint center outlet waste kit. We have an 1.5" PVC slip joint center outlet waste kit. And here we also have an example of an 1.5" chrome slip joint center waste T. These are not as commonly installed as the other types of T's with the baffles, largely because when you have a center waste outlet like this, the drainage from one sink basin can actually come up in the other basin, and nobody really wants that. So continuous waste kit or the side outlet are much more common. At times, dishwashers or other drains would need to connect to the drainage under a sink. So there are some fittings designed for those connections. These are called branched tail pieces. The branches coming off are what allow for connections, and they do come in different diameters. But let's have a look at some of these. Here we have an 1.5" PVC slip joint tail piece with a branch. We have an 1.5" ABS slip joint tailpiece with a branch. And we have an 1.5" chrome slip joint tailpiece with a branch. But you can get these also with a flanged end, and they're also referred to as a direct connect because they'll thread directly onto the underside of a basket strainer drain. Here we have an 1.5" PVC flanged tailpiece with a branch. We have an 1.5" ABS flanged tailpiece with a branch. And we have an 1.5" chrome flanged tailpiece with a branch. When connecting multiple fixtures together, we may need a 90, and there are different options for that. We have the slip joint and flanged. This is an 1.5" PVC slip joint 90 elbow, and this is an 1.5" chrome slip joint 90 elbow. Much more common than a slip joint 90 is going to be the waist arm. Now this is a 90 elbow, but it has an extension on it, and it's used to reach from one sink basin to another and connect them together. So this is far more common. They often come in kits. This is an 1.5" PVC slip joint waist arm. This is an 1.5" ABS slip joint waist arm. And we have an 1.5" chrome slip joint waist arm. A waist arm elbow can also have a flanged connection, so that could directly connect to the underside of a basket strainer on a sink. So here we have an 1.5" PVC flanged waist arm. We have an 1.5" ABS flanged waist arm. And we have an 1.5" chrome flanged waist arm. Now, at times we may need to offset our drainage to get it to connect, and these fittings are made specifically to be able to meet those different angles. This is a PVC 45-degree offset in slip joint. This one is double-ended, so it could be cut in half and used for 2 sinks. This is an 1.5" chrome 45-degree offset. Once again, we have a double-ended, meaning you can cut that and use it for multiple installations. Now, when connecting multiple sink basins, there are kits that are slip joint with all the parts you would need to make those connections. This is called a continuous waste kit, and the one we have here is an 1.5" PVC continuous waste kit. You can also get an 1.5" ABS continuous waste kit, or a chrome. This is 1.5" chrome continuous waste kit. But for kitchen sink applications specifically, you may also have a disposal, and disposals hook up different than your basket strainers or sink drains. So we have a different kit. This is an 1.5" PVC disposal waste kit. You can see it has 2 flanged ends, one that connects vertically to the underside of a basket strainer, and one that would connect horizontally to the outlet of the disposal, connecting the 2 together. This is an 1.5" ABS disposal waste kit, and we have an 1.5" chrome disposal waste kit. In this video, we have talked through slip joint or tubular fittings used to connect fixtures, and we've looked at a lot of different connection fittings and traps, but this is still not all of them. There may be others out there. As a plumber, you will want to master the installation of slip joint. Every time you install one, make sure that you check and double check for leaks. In this video, we have gone over a lot of slip joint parts and fittings. I'd recommend, if you didn't get all that the first time, watch this again. Make sure that you know the names of these so that when you go to the supply house and order parts, you know what you're talking about. Make sure that you are really good at slip joint installation, because if you spend any time in plumbing, you are going to do a lot of this.